Ukraine should not be a victim of Russian aggression in the public sphere. It must emphasize that it is creating a public and successful experience of countering this aggression.
Security threats for their countries, and that's why they are trying somehow to actively rearm their military.
And now everyone says out loud that we should prepare for war in 2025.
Hello and welcome to Ukraine in Flames, a special project by Ukraine Media Centre and NGO Euro-Atlantic Course. And I'm your host, Matt Wickham. And in this episode, we discuss European security issues among Russian aggression and this year's US presidential election. Ukraine in Flames today will be with experts Yevhen, Magda, Archil Tsintsadze and Ihor Seletskyi. If you want to learn more about this subject, please continue watching this video and don't forget to press subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any of our videos in the future. Our first expert on this show, Yevhen Magda, director of the Institute of World Policy, emphasizes the imperative for Ukraine to transcend its role as a victim of Russian aggression, urging a proactive stance in sharing its successful experience in countering such threats, while underscoring the importance of embodying democratic ideals and European values on the global stage. Let's take a listen.
The year 2024 has significantly exacerbated the issue of European security. After all, the biggest ever war is being waged on the territory of the continent. Besides, new challenges have appeared. Paradoxically, among these challenges are elections and other events that are related to the political and social life of the world. In 2022, the European Union demonstrated extraordinary responsibility when it became a leader in supporting Ukraine in the face of Russian aggression against it. In 2023, the European Union emphasized that it is ready to start accession negotiations with Ukraine and Moldova. But let's be realistic. This situation does not mean that we can rest on our laurels. We must work and look for different opportunities to tell our colleagues about how we see the future. And in a world where the main event will be the 2024 elections in the United States, we must demonstrate our commitment to the ideals of democracy and European values, among which are solidarity, the ability to support the weak, and the ability to act in these interests of the entire continent. This is our goal for today. Ukraine should not be a victim of Russian aggression in the public sphere. It must emphasize that it is creating a public and successful experience of countering this aggression. It must bring this experience to all interested participants in the political process, primarily on the European continent. We must say goodbye to geopolitical inferiority. Europe and the whole world doesn't need weak. The world needs strong actors. And Ukraine is strong.
Ihor Seletskyi, director of the NGO Euro-Atlantic Course, is next to speak and critique the European Union's historical security stance, recognizing breakthroughs in geopolitics, but highlighting its vulnerability in the absence of a comprehensive security component. He also underscores the wake-up call prompted by the Russian aggression, with European countries now openly acknowledging the need to prepare for potential conflicts in 2025.
Former Belgian Foreign Minister Mark Exens once said in the 1980s or 1990s that the EU was an economic giant, a geopolitical dwarf, and a military worm. We see the situation changing. At least we can no longer say that the EU is a geopolitical dwarf, as there are obvious breakthroughs in this area. And now it's time to speak about the status of a worm in the security issue. In fact, it's absolutely true, because after the Second World War, especially after the end of the Cold War with the Soviet Union, with the countries of the socialist bloc in general, the security situation in the EU countries can be characterized by such an apt phrase as security poisoning. Almost 3 generations without a war, and they seem to have won the Cold War. But no one prepared for the conflicts, and by and large, they didn't even pay for their security. So Donald Trump's claim to NATO members were grounded. No one seems to have paid the 2%. Maybe I'm wrong about the UK or Poland. That is, the entire burden was borne by the USA. Of course, there was a security component in the EU found in treaties, and certain decisions were made. That is, there were good words. Institutionally, we can say that there are some initiatives. In fact, there's no security component in the European Union at all. It just doesn't exist. EU member states have their own separate armies, as it turned out, not in a very good condition, as the Russian-Ukrainian war has shown. A lot of equipment is actually out of order, but we aren't going to talk about this now. At the EU level, there's no security component except for a political one, in a certain sense. It is similar to the situation with foreign affairs, where a foreign policy of individual countries sometimes does not correlate at all, and sometimes does not quite correlate with the EU policy, which isn't quite clearly defined either. We do see some changes in the security component now, and I like those changes a lot. What has the Russian aggression done? It has woken up the EU countries. They've understood what they must do, and now everyone says it out loud that we should prepare for war in 2025. This is from a leak in Germany. The British say it openly, the Nordic countries say it openly, as well as, of course, the Baltic states, Poland, and those who understand what and who Russia is. So we see that countries are waking up. The only problem, in my view, is that it mustn't remain at the level of individual countries again. There must be a correlation at the EU level and a truly EU security policy. I don't have an answer whether it should be a substitute for NATO. It can't be, obviously, a substitute for NATO. How will they relate to each other? How will they interact? I don't and can't have an answer. I'm not so involved in these matters, but it is clear that a joint strategy based on not words but on reality must be formulated and implemented. The reason for this is not so much the upcoming US elections and what Trump once said on the sidelines about withdrawing from NATO. I don't know whether he will or won't. We'll see. And it isn't even only Russian aggression, because Russian aggression is only the first step. And Russian aggression has shown us whether it will become a gateway to a new era, the era of chaos looming over our world. It's obvious that the world has entered the era of turbulence, the era of the Third World War, which for the EU and the West is largely being waged by hybrid methods, and not on their territory. So far, it's on the territory of Ukraine and some other countries, but it's already underway. Ukraine is becoming even more important for Europe, especially in the security component. It's obvious that the Ukrainian army is the strongest on the continent now. It is obvious. For the EU, Ukraine has a huge plus in the security component. Now, Europe must be ready to pay for this security with money, and in the future, the payment will be made by Ukraine's membership in the EU. It is useful, mutually beneficial. In this sense, the EU needs Ukraine more than Ukraine needs the EU.
The final expert on today's show, Archil Tsintsadze, security policy expert, points out that the UK is actively engaged, realizing the threat Russia holds. The Baltic states are actively arming, but urges increased efforts from Germany and France because the EU currently needs a leader. Let's take a listen.
Well, when we speak about European security, we really understand that the part of Europe is under the war already, and this just used to have European security is no longer the one we basically had about 10 years ago. So now I believe that there are several, I would say, several teams of the European countries which basically more or less understand, some of them they understand more, some of them they understand less, the real problem of Russia's Ukraine invasion and problem with these forthcoming 2024 US elections. And but theoretically you could divide these, saying that there are Central European countries and there are Eastern European countries as well, and then there is I would say the separate player, United Kingdom, which and who basically really understand that there might be a serious problem, and that's why they are the most the most engaged, I would say, the most plugged-in country, assisting and helping and trying somehow to stop Putin's invasion in Ukraine. Well, then there is the second group of the countries, which is the Eastern European countries, that is the Baltic states and the Poland, and they really understand that the 2024 might be decisive for them, waiting for the US elections, and they might be really security threats for their countries, and that's why they are trying somehow to actively rearm their military during the 2024. And then there is Central European countries, which basically are slow because they have their internal problems, and I would not say that these internal problems are they're really serious, but those are the internal politics, I would say. And these countries, I don't believe that they really understand that after 2024, after the U.S. elections, the United States would not rush to help them if in case they have some kind of security problems in the Central Europe, I would say. And these two countries, the basic player two countries are France and Germany, where we see that the Germany, they have the internal contradictions between the political parties, and they can't simply really assess the threat which Putin presents. And then there is in France, which basically also needs to be leading and doing more if they really want to survive these, I would say, might be serious problems in European security.
You've been watching this special project by Ukraine Media Center and NGO Your course dedicated to the Russian-Ukrainian war, Ukraine in Flames. In the description under this video, you can find more information on how you can help Ukraine fight Russian aggression. If you find our work useful, please like and share this video. Slava Ukraini!